another episode of Growing Grand. And today we've transitioned, we've ascended to grow here in the hoop house with all of these plants. It's kind of refreshing. It's super nice.
Right. It's a little cold outside of the hoop house, but here...
Yeah, I had to take my jacket. I had to take my coat off. It was a little too warm for me with all these layers on. So it's pretty nice in here. It feels good.
Luckily, it's a little cloudy outside, or else it'd be like 80 degrees in here.
Oh, we don't got the sun beaming down too hard on us.
It's a lovely day. Lovely spring day. The birds are coming back. I heard some frogs last night.
Yeah, like the dandelion in your ear there.
Yeah, they're just starting to bloom. So it's just a random arrangement of stuff from around the farm. We got some kale in here and some dead purple nettle, and some other fun stuff. But
yeah, so today we're going to be talking about how to keep it local, I guess, right? Because we got the CSA things that we do here and all that kind of business, and we're handing out or we're selling vegetables and fruits locally, and that's kind of the goal of a project like this, a sustainable farm,
right.
Working within the community. And so yes, let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, why is that even important?
Why is that important?
Yeah, so I suppose to start, I'm curious, where do you usually get your food, or where do you think average people typically get their food
from? I'll tell you honestly here, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah, let's be open here.
I go to Family Fare specifically for my fruits and vegetables. And I go to Family Fare specifically because I like the display they have there. You know, you get to see everything out in the open, and they spritz water on it, and they keep it looking nice and fresh. And so I feel like I'm getting a fresh product from there when I go there to get it. And so, that's what I pick up from there.
Family Fare, and especially in our area, and Meyer too, there's been a big push to get local food in there whenever possible. But, most of our food that you see in the grocery stores, it comes from really far away, especially during the winter. You know, when you eat those strawberries or peppers or whatever. They're either coming from like Mexico or even Peru and further, and so when you get them, they're not as fresh. So we're kind of talking in past episodes about how when produce is bred nowadays, it's not bred for taste or nutrients. It's bred for shelf life and that look appeal. So typically when you go to the grocery store, and I'll admit I get a lot of my stuff from the grocery store too, because it's the most convenient way. But a lot of times you don't know where it's coming from. And the further the distance between two people having some sort of economic exchange, the more middlemen, the more likely both of them are going to be exploited in some way.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know too much specifically about farming, but in my environmental science class, I had a really big fascination with like the ocean and like where the fish we eat and things come from, and I did a ton of research on that. And I know downtown they have that market where you can buy fresh fish and things like that. And what's that?
Fish Labs.
Yeah,
Fish Labs in the downtown market.
Yeah, in the downtown market. And if you go to the downtown market, you can ask them like where they got their fish from, and they're like legally obligated to tell you, like, and they have to tell you. And so they can say, oh, we raised this on a farm, or we got it from sustainable practices, and blah blah blah. And so some businesses are, like you're saying, becoming way more conscious and involved with where their things are coming from, so that we can be more mindful consumers, right?
And be more sustainable. So, like, what even does sustainable mean? Well, it's just perpetuating itself. And the fact of the matter is, especially with our fisheries, they are decimated. And they can bounce back pretty quick, but that would require us to leave, like, portions of the ocean off limits where life can then regenerate itself. In fact, a few years ago, for a writing class I had, was in Harvard Business Review's like top 25 ideas or something. I don't remember the year, maybe 2012, 2013. There was this radical idea to have these marine sanctuaries for like 10% of the oceans. So in practice, that might be a little difficult. Because if someone's been fishing in a certain spot for a long time, it's really hard to convince them to stop.
Yeah, I know that was a kind of an aside, but also on the same topic. We watched a lot of old videos and things about the fisheries in my environmental science class, and that was a big problem with when they were first starting this conservation of nature, was that the people were already doing that for a living and a life, and like a whole city, like Boston, I think it was built around that in the early days of Boston. And when they start saying, you know, you can't fish here during these times, and you can't do this, and like trying to get that message across that it's about the sustainability, that it's about...
it's actually about getting higher yields, too. Because if you, say, put 10% off limits, you're going to get greater than 10% increase in production. It's going to be much more than that. But if you just fish everywhere too much, then you don't give life that chance to bounce back.
Yeah, and it's that same as we were always talking about with the soil erosion and things like that. It's kind of the same concept, right? Like if you are growing way too many of the same things, or not having that plant variety and diversity, then you're just stripping away all the same nutrients and everything, and eventually there's no way for it to come back and sustain itself.
Right, and same thing with the soil. The soil has tremendous capacity to regenerate itself too, but unfortunately, too often our agriculture has become extractive, and it's moved into the hands of these giant entities. And like I was saying earlier, we don't always know what they're doing. So that's another reason why you want to try and get stuff locally.
Yeah.
Because then you can have that face-to-face interaction with the farmer, and so you can ask them, just like you're asking about the fish, like, oh, what kind of practices do you use? You know, like, where's your farm at? Personally, I love to look at stuff on like Google Maps, so if I hear about a cool new farm, that's one of the first things I'll do is I'll pull up a satellite image and see how they lay out their field, their infrastructure. But yeah, and you know, I'm a nerd like that though.
Maybe a farm nerd, you go to the store and say, where's it at, so I can check it out.
Actually, I was a farm inspector for one summer for the downtown market.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I went around to about 30 farms in the area and just checked out their place.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
That makes you pretty knowledgeable about how the different farms work around the area.
And also realizing how much more there is to learn.
Yeah.
Because every farm's a little bit different. And, you know, there's challenges on every farm. And some got it more figured out than others. But yeah, there's always something to learn with farming. So the whole point of the job was I was inspecting the farms to make sure that they were growing what they were saying they're growing.
Oh, okay.
Because a common issue with farmers markets sometimes is people will say buy from whatever giant producer there is and then just like resell it.
Oh, like a wholesale kind of thing.
And so I think that honestly has a place, but we just need to be transparent with it. The trouble is if someone's saying that they're growing all these tomatoes but they're actually shipping them in from Mexico, you don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Because then it can drive down the prices for the people who are actually trying to make a living from it, that are growing it.
It makes a lot of sense that there are places like supermarkets, like Meijer and Family Fare and things like that for groceries. Mostly because I know a lot that costs a lot in the first place to be shipping masses of food and doing all these kinds of things. So if we can't grow enough locally, the food has to come from somewhere, right? And
well, we can grow enough locally.
Oh, we can.
Well, at least for a lot of the stuff and for most parts of the year. The tricky thing is a lot of our farmland is dedicated towards stuff that doesn't end up in the grocery stores.
Oh, I see.
So, you know, corn, most of corn nowadays actually goes to make ethanol. So, you know, like an alternative energy fuel. But it's actually really inefficient to make ethanol from corn. It's really poor returns. And with oil prices back down, it's not really, it's kind of a waste if you ask me.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to get like fuel from biomass, I'd recommend something that's perennial. Because with corn, you have to plant it every year, and it's a very extractive plant. Whereas say something like willows, you know, talked about that a little bit, that we have here, you know, you plant them once, and then for decades you can harvest.
Keep giving, yeah.
But yeah, so most of the corn that's grown is either for ethanol or for feedstock, for meat production, usually, or you know, animals at least. So
you're not even growing the corn for a sustainable reason. You're just growing it for other reasons.
Yeah,
and it's impacting the sustainable things that it could be growing.
And a big part of that is because of agricultural subsidies, because we subsidize that. And it was, you know, well-intentioned when it came about around the Great Depression era. The law of supply and demand.
Yeah.
well, since nobody had money, the demand for stuff was low, so there was a greater supply. Well, so farmers were going broke because of that. So the government stepped in and said, okay, we'll pay you not to grow on a certain percentage of your land to lower the supply, and then in theory that would raise the price. Well, eventually it morphed once we got better storage technology. It's where the government just buys all the surplus grain at a set price, so there's no fluctuation. So the farmer's guaranteed a price on his stuff.
Oh, okay, I see.
And then they just store it for later. So if it was a good year, then they just store the extra for the bad years. And in theory, that works out pretty well. The trouble is when all that power is concentrated in a few hands.
Yeah, it's like a matter of ethics at a certain point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all the good intentions in the world don't mean anything if it doesn't get put into practice for the right reasons and the right ways.
And so it quickly evolved to where the biggest companies took advantage of things. Mm-hmm. And there was a saying of one of our old heads of the USDA, Rusty Butts, it's actually his name, get big or get out. Mm. So all these like small family farms or mid-sized family farms have been driven out. And that's too bad. And nowadays less than 2% of our population are farmers, and most of them, the average age of farmer is almost 60. So we need more young farmers to get into it.
Well, they've kind of pushed it out of the everyday life, Like I've never thought of farming ever before I came here.
Yeah, I honestly didn't either. And I grew up with a lot of that stuff. I grew up with fruit trees and a big veggie garden, and we raised chickens, but I never thought of farming as like a career. That's something that might be noble. Like Joel Salatin has this joke. It's like, how often do you have like a soccer mom talk at like their son's soccer game? Like, yeah, and Johnny wants to be a farmer. It's like, no, my kid wants to be a doctor or whatever else. And that's noble stuff. But farming, it's really rewarding, but it is tough. Mm-hmm. And so some common themes I see with farms in the area and beyond is some people might be really good with the soil and how plants work, but not necessarily very good on the number side of things, and they'll try and grow too many things.
Oh, I see.
But then the opposite side also exists, where some farms are only interested in the bottom line, and then maybe the ecological health of their system declines or is compromised a little bit. And certainly there's a spectrum, and some farms are good at doing both, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems so interesting that good farming practice comes from this communication between farms about what works, what doesn't work, which numbers are right, which numbers work really well, which ones don't. And there's a need for, even if you have like a farm, you still need that community of farms in order to make it all work sustainably and in a good way.
Mm-hmm. And so we're really lucky in West Michigan. The farming community is very open and eager to share and help each other up. And so there's a group called the West Michigan Growers Group, and it's great. Basically every month they'll go around to a different farm and have a big potluck. So, that way you get to actually see what's going on, because when you actually come out to a farm, you see so much more than what you might see at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Even though the farmer's market's a really great way and a very common way that farms sell their produce. And there's a lot of benefits to them, because you get to actually interact face-to-face with the farmer, but there's nothing quite like actually going to the farm.
Yeah.
Although the farmer's market is a good step. And in the area, we have a whole bunch of farmer's markets. So yeah, what ones have you heard about in the area?
Well, I've only been, there's just 2 different ones downtown, and I think those are the only ones I've ever actually been to, other than the one that happens on campus.
Yeah.
During the seasons where it's up.
Is that the Fulton Street Farmers Market?
Yeah, the Fulton Street Farmers Market is definitely the biggest one in the area. And it's been around, I don't know how many decades, but it's a long-lasting pillar in our community.
Wow.
And so the Grand Rapids Downtown Market also has a farmer's market, but there's a little bit of difficulties there. I'm not sure if they're doing it anymore, to be honest. But yeah, there's all sorts of other farmers markets. Like Spectrum has one. There's a cool service called the Veggie Van that's run by the YMCA. So it's like a mobile farmers market.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah. So the idea is they have this big van that drives around the city and stops in different areas and sells a bunch of produce.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea that those kids came up with the I Challenge You.
Exactly. So we're trying to mimic that with a smaller version that's pulled by a bike.
Yeah, around campus.
Or a hybrid electric bike. We're talking maybe with some engineering students to get like an like a solar powered or a hybrid electric bike that can pull our trailer around. But anyway, like the cool thing about something like the veggie van is it can help alleviate food deserts. Because in a lot of low income communities, there's not a whole lot of good places to get quality food.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. The idea of food deserts, because I know personally when I was growing up that was a huge problem.
Yeah, so a food desert is, well, what is it? What do you think?
Oh, well, food desert when we don't have access to grocery stores or fresh produce or good food or good healthy food, I would say. And so it becomes like effort. It becomes a chore to actually go out and find things to eat. And I know there's a lot of times when I was growing up where we would just go to the corner store and buy junk because it was way easier to do than taking the bus for 3 different stops to get to the mire to be able to buy produce and things like that. You end up kind of being forced into a really bad diet.
Yeah. And a lot of that honestly is due to the subsidies that we have, because the cheapest food is typically like high in calories, but really low in nutrients. So it's especially an issue in these food desert areas.
Yeah.
And there's a guy in LA named Ron Finley. Sometimes he's known as the gangsta gardener. But he's got some really good things to say. He's got a TED Talk I'd recommend people listen to. He has a quote. What's it? It's like, growing your own food is like printing your own money. Plus you get strawberries.
Yeah. I like it.
Something like that. And so locally, though, there's a really cool farm named New City Farm. And so they partner with or work with high school students. And they are right in the city, like on Leonard Street, so the northeast part of the city. And they set out a goal to everything that they grow is kept in the community. So they have a CSA. So a CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And I'll touch on the origins of that in a minute. But it's basically a farm share program.
Okay.
And so their CSA members are all in the community. They have a farm stand that you can pick up on site. But one of the cool things that the folks there are doing is they got into the liquor stores around and got the liquor stores to start selling their produce.
That sounds like the perfect solution to all the problems I had when I was little.
Right. And sometimes working with those smaller like mom and pop shops are easier to deal with because they don't have as many hoops that they'd have to jump through to get your product in there. Say if you were to try and get your stuff into a family fair or a mire, I think they'd be willing to work with you, but it's easier, I think, to get into the smaller shops first. And yes, that's a really cool model. But food deserts are a really big issue, and I think the best way to do it is just to grow your own food.
Yeah, it sounds like the solution that makes the most sense. If you don't have it, then you should work towards trying to make it somehow. Right.
And if everybody, or at least several people in the community have like well-tended garden plots, that creates like a sense of pride, and can help pull people together.
And talk about community, right? I mean, we're talking about what these things are, like what local farms are, and like the necessity of them in regards to being able to get produce to places and things like that. But let's talk about their impact a bit too, right? Because if you have that, like you said, not only are you making the community stronger, everybody's going to a place around the corner for their vegetables and fruits and things like that. But now you have like a sustainable neighborhood. Like now the neighborhood doesn't need that mire in order for everyone to get their groceries and things like that. And when you don't need that, then
well, it at least alleviates the need.
Yeah, alleviates the need.
You know, as a farmer, I try and grow most of the stuff I eat, but I'm always gonna love coffee.
Oh yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of like local roasters that you could go through, but as sad as it is, we won't be able to grow coffee in Michigan anytime soon. It's very cold sensitive. Although, funny enough, I don't know if people can see this plant that's sticking on Lamont's shirt. They're kind of wilty right now, but these are called cleavers. And these are like a fun plant because they just like stick to fabric. But they're actually in the coffee family.
Really?
Yeah. they're distant relatives of coffee. So eventually they'll produce like seed pods that you could, in theory, use as a coffee substitute. So, quick aside. There's all sorts of random uses for
I was gonna
plants
say,
that grow around here.
I've never heard of anything for coffee except coffee. Maybe tea, you know.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff that I had looked over when I first, started growing. But as you start interacting with it, you get to know, like, oh, that plant. And you learn a name for it, and then you learn that it has some more uses than maybe you just assumed at first.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it opens up the world in a different way. You get to start seeing. So I can imagine I forget his name. You're talking about the guy who was breeding plants.
Luther Burbank.
Yeah. And you can kind of see his kind of fascination with it when you think about the coffee plants here. Like you see these other plants that are like coffee plants, but we can't grow coffee plants here. So what could we grow here, right? Maybe we could grow these things instead, and now we have like our own version of a coffee plant.
And so with plant breeding, it takes a little while, so you need to have some patience. But they're extremely valuable.
There's a lot of discovery that gets to happen in that as well. So,
And so when you go to, say, the farmer's market, it's awesome because there's just a big display of the stuff that's growing in our area. Just like the grocery store you're talking about. They got their nice display of veggies, and they definitely know how to set things up to catch the eye. At the farmer's market, too.
I think the farmer's market is always super fun to go to because of how colorful everything is. You say, I want tomatoes, and you go over there, look at tomatoes, and you realize there's an entire world of tomatoes that you had no idea about.
And there's the yellow ones, green ones, purple ones, striped ones.
I love the little yellow ones and the ones that are kind of black and red at the same time. It's really fun to see that as well.
Yeah, and then kind of like what we were saying earlier, you get to see the person that grew it a lot of times. And it's cool because you get to see that they're proud of the stuff they grow.
Yeah.
But so a little bit earlier, we mentioned a CSA. So a CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So the idea is, or the original idea was that a community would basically hire a farmer.
Oh, okay, I see.
And so the farmer would, get a salary or a base price, and pre-sell all the produce, and then the people who buy shares share the surplus. So whenever there's like some lettuce in abundance, they get a bunch of lettuce. Tomatoes are bumping, you get a bunch of tomatoes.
Okay, so it's like the way that they're supporting the local farm.
Yeah.
You go there, you kind of invest in the stock of it, and then you get some of the produce back, and they continue being able to grow and provide for.
And so you do share some of the risk, because farming is like a risky thing. Sometimes there might be a drought or a late frost, but sometimes it might be a perfect year and you get bumper crops. So while there might be, so that's just like a saying for an overabundance.
Oh, okay.
Bumper crops.
They're just falling out of the closet, these crops.
Kind of. It comes mostly from like fruit trees. Because like say with apples, if there's a late frost and they have the blossoms already opened, it'll wipe out the apple crop for that year. But the next year will be a bumper crop. There will be even more. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Oh, okay.
So, and with the CSA, you get to kind of taste the seasons. So in the spring, you get a lot of these fresh baby greens and baby root veggies like green onions and carrots and beets. And then as the summer moves along, you start to get your zucchinis and your cucumbers, and then your tomatoes and peppers and eggplant. And then in the fall, you get like your winter squash. And
wow, it sounds really fun. Like throughout the year, you're getting, whatever they're growing. And maybe you don't always get the things that you want exactly, but you are getting a huge variety of things still.
And it encourages you to try new things that maybe you wouldn't have before. And it's a little bit exciting. You get a little surprise. And a lot of times I like to, if we have extra of something, like we have a bunch of extra flowers, I like to give them away too.
Yeah.
So as a CSA member, we take care of you. So we offer a CSA. And people are welcome to sign up now on our website. You can find it pretty easy. We got a form on there. You can sign up. And we also offer delivery to folks on campus. So, you can either pick up at the farmer's market on Wednesdays. You can come out to the farm, which I actually encourage a lot of people to do, to come out to the farm. You get to walk around the field, see how your stuff's growing, and, maybe get a little bit of excitement for the next week. I'd be like, yeah, those tomatoes are almost ripe. You're going to get some next week.
Oh wow, yeah.
And maybe if you want to pick some flowers.
It's a lot of stuff to look forward to when you're growing on the farm. I mean, we talk about that pretty often in the show. You talk about how satisfying it is, but when you invest in the CSA shares, and you become a part of that as well. Become a part of coming to the farm, looking at them, and knowing that you're going to get a bit of that, and that just really community. Bringing you get to become a part of what the farm is doing and growing.
Yeah, you become part of the mission, and you help support our students here and create new opportunities for them.
I think that's I hadn't considered, because I knew a bit about CSA shares, but I hadn't considered that other farms also were doing that. So you have more than one. You're talking about the New City program.
Yeah, there's all sorts of CSAs in the area. In fact, I think it might be this Saturday. I'm not sure. Folks should check. It's called the Growers Fair, and the West Michigan Growers Group is putting it on. And that'll be at the Grand Rapids Downtown Market in the morning. Forgive me, I don't know the time off the top of my head. But it'll just basically be a big open house for CSA. So you can meet a bunch of farmers in the area. And
get to know which one you'd like.
Yeah, you can kind of
check them all out.
Right. Maybe based on where they're at or like their growing practices.
You'd bring a bunch of questions and even ask them, how sustainable some of their things might be, or what kind of things are they doing that are different than other farms. And
yeah, so
sounds like a fun meet and greet, a little speed dating with your farms.
Quick aside, I went to a farm a few years ago. They had this thing that they're calling weed dating, and so the idea is, have you heard of speed dating before? Right?
Oh yeah.
So typically a speed dating, you sit across from a person, and you have whatever you want to talk about, and then someone rings a bell, and then you move on. Well, weed dating is the same thing, but you do it across the bench from another person, and you do some weeding. So it kind of lowers the pressure a little bit. If you get someone that maybe is a little annoying, then you can just focus on your weeding, or maybe you engage in the conversation a little bit more. But haven't done that here yet. But some people are interested in
sounds like a fun
putting
idea.
on a weed dating event.
You gotta find a lot of friends, or
we gotta be careful though, so people don't get the wrong idea with that, I suppose. But that's a fun thing. So in addition to just coming out to the farm and like looking at stuff, a lot of farms in the area will have Upicks, and I really like Upicks because it's kind of it's a great activity.
What is it? What is this?
So
Upicks?
a Upick, it's kind of what it sounds like. You go to a farm and you pick it. So like you pick apple orchards in the fall. I always used to go there with my dad and family growing up, and it's like a great tradition. And there's a bunch of places in the area.
Yeah, I guess that is a thing
like
that I've done a few
agritourism.
times as well.
But yeah, there's like you pick strawberries, raspberries,
I like blueberries. They have that string
my
of blueberry
goodness.
farms over there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I probably feel a little bad sometimes because I eat so many as I'm picking. It's just like, oh.
Blueberries are that good though, so can't really blame
One
you.
time, a couple years ago, I picked 30 pounds of blueberries at one time, and I don't think it lasted a week.
They are like
a lot of
blueberries.
blueberries.
They're like little candies,
Actually, when I was a farm inspector, I went to this blueberry farm, and it was about an hour away, and I asked if I could pick some blueberries and take them home. So he was an awesome guy, and he gave me like this big bucket, and it didn't make it home.
Oh man,
just couldn't stop. They're
that
pretty
does
addictive.
sound great. I gotta be sure that's a thing that I do this summer.
Right, and then you can freeze them too. So I just got a test freezer. I'm really excited about. But yeah, you can pick all the stuff, and then even during the winter when they're not in season, you can still have local blueberries, and not have it be shipped from the other side of the world.
Oh wow, yeah.
So, U-picks are a really cool thing. Some CSAs, they do a U-pick with it too. So like, at least for some of the crops, like cherry tomatoes, maybe we harvest all the salad greens, and we haven't done that quite yet, but we'll harvest most of the stuff, and then you can come out and pick your cherry tomatoes or whatever. And kind of on that, we are piloting a Workshare program this year.
Oh, okay.
So it's essentially a CSA share, but so instead of paying, you volunteer. Exactly. So you just commit like 4 hours a week or so, and then you get basically a CSA share.
That sounds like a little easier for the college student, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So you get to learn while you're doing it too.
You get to learn. You get to relax a bit out on the farm.
Yeah, get some
Get a
vitamin
little bit
D
of-
therapy. It's
and
pretty
you
good.
get to go home with a bunch of vegetables.
Yeah, and so if people just come out and volunteer, we'll give them veggies too. But by signing up for a Workshare, you get priority. Because sometimes there's only so many strawberries we have, right? You can never have enough strawberries. But yeah, and then again, I just encourage everybody, if you want to have local food, the best place is have it in your backyard.
In your backyard, and it sounds
It's
like
pretty
it's
easy too.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna say it's not even too hard to.
or even have just like a patio, like a window box. Like this lettuce here, these are some transplants, and you can just put a few of these into a pot, and then you have your nice salad bowl. So every night, you want to pick a leaf off for dinner, you got it right there.
Oh, these little baby lettuces.
Yep, and they're really pretty too, and they come in all different shapes and sizes.
I have a few questions.
Yeah, what's up, Allie?
Say I didn't want to start from seeds. Is there a place that I can get transplants?
Yeah, there's all sorts of places. We'll do a plant sale this year,
That's a great question.
but a lot of greenhouses in the area you can buy plants from.
Okay.
Because starting from seed, it is one of those things where if you're only starting a few, it's a lot of effort and probably not worth it, to be honest. Except if you don't factor in the joy that you get from seeing a little seed pop up, because I think that's worth a lot. But yeah, you can buy plants from wherever. And say if you rent a community garden here at the farm, you want to start a garden, but you live in one of the apartments, rent a community garden plot with us, and we'll give you seeds, we'll give you plants. You have all our tools, and you can do whatever you want.
There's a lot of those plots out there as well. I don't know, last year when I was volunteering pretty often, I saw a lot of people coming in and out and checking on their gardens all the time.
Mm-hmm. And it's cool because you get to see almost someone's personality come out in the bed.
Yeah, you definitely do. It's so crazy the different things that people decide to plant. There's somebody that grew was it broccoli
Or kale.
Or-
just kale.
Yeah, there's the just kale garden, and then there's the just broccoli garden, and then there's the just zucchini one, and
Then some are just completely all over the place. Some are in neat rows, and
there was
I
one
won't tell you what
that
to
had
do.
like 15 different kinds of tomatoes in it. Like they grew a bunch of different viney ones, and you could just see all of the little ones in there growing out.
quick aside, with tomatoes, I mentioned grafting a little bit, right?
Yes.
So you can graft tomatoes onto one another, but you can also graft a tomato onto a potato because they're so closely related. You can take like the top of a tomato plant and put it on the roots of a potato plant. And so one of our old interns, Renee, she did that in one of her labs, her plant biology labs or something. So she grew one of those in the plot. So,
What happens when you do that?
honestly, it's kind of a novelty. Neither of them. I've talked before about the principle of allocation. So a tomato can or a plant can say produce a bunch of berries or store a bunch of energy in their roots,
So
which
it's
is the potato.
The potato is the root, and
The potato's an underground, root balls, basically.
Oh, okay. And
they're
the
called
tomato
tubers.
is the berry.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So when you graft one onto another, you're not going to get.
Kind of has to decide which way it's going.
So you'll get probably poor yields of both, but it's a cool factor.
Yeah, but they're still going.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about seasonality. Yeah. And keeping it
Sorry,
local.
I have so many questions this time.
That's great.
The community garden, just for all of our viewers, does it cost any money? How do you sign up for it?
Yeah. So you can. We'll get the sign up form on our website pretty soon, but it's $20 to sign up for the whole season, and that includes plants that we have and seeds and.
That's
Again,
pretty cheap.
we'll kind of give you some guidance if you want, but if you want to just do your own thing, have at it.
Yeah, I mean, Renee went in there and was experimenting with tomatoes and potatoes, so.
Yeah, so on April 1st, we're going to have an event in the Holton Cooker Living Center called Cultivate. So it's be kind of an open house meet and greet. I encourage people to come out and check it out. It should be fun. We'll have some live music and some free stuff. So it should be a fun time. And then we'll come out to the farm after and give some tours. So that'll be at the Holton Cooker Living Center on campus. And encourage you to sign up for a CSA or a Workshare or an internship. Check out our website for more updates.
Yeah, if you're looking to get more involved, but you feel like you can't really engage as much as you might think you should have to be involved on something like the farm, then the community garden or the CSA shares are really great ways to kind of be helping without having to go way out of your way to be helping or doing something.
Or just come out to volunteer hours one day.
Volunteer hours.
You don't have
as
to
well.
let us know. Like it's helpful if you do, especially if you're going to bring a bunch of people. But yeah, just come out and you can dip your toes in.
There's always something you can do on the farm. So
yeah, and every season's a little bit different. So if you come out in the next few weeks, you're going to be putting a bunch of these plants in the ground, giving them their new home.
the little baby lettuces.
Little baby lettuces.
It is really fun to plant baby plants.
Plant this one right now.
No one can see it, but he's tucked it in very nicely.
I planted
it's
in
been
this,
tucked in.
It's hidden. Yeah. So let us know what you thought of this show, and if you
Let us know.
I didn't catch that. Let us know what you thought of today's show, and if you have other topics that you'd like to see us talk about and share. Happy to hear.
If you have any questions about any of the CSAs or the community garden things, you can ask on the Facebook, or we'll be posting information about it as well. So,
Until next time.
Till next time, keep on growing.